Welcome to episode 88 of the Grip Strip podcast. It's thankful time. In this case, post-Thanksgiving edition of the Grip Strip podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm here with my co-host, Joshua Fine. What's good, brother?
I'm doing great, Phil. Of course, thankful as always. It's Thanksgiving time here in the United States, but hey, happy Thanksgiving to everybody here in America listening to this, and also in anywhere else in the world if you're listening. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Of course, thankful to be on the podcast with you, and of course, thankful for anybody that listens to this.
Yep, absolutely. Thankful to you as always, being my co-host and sidekick, and for being so understanding. We were supposed to record this on Wednesday, but I was hanging out with Jasmine and forgot that we were supposed to do the podcast on Wednesday, even though it's my show, or our show, and we do it on Wednesday evenings, but it's day before Thanksgiving. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. And when bowling, I had to take care of some issues on the bowling side since the bowling alley fucked up a brand new bowling ball, so... And I was hanging with friends.
Bowling issues, yeah.
Got to take care of when you have a ball you had for not even 3 weeks, and they go and jack it up. You're gonna want to get that solution, get a solution to that. But in regards to this episode, we're going to talk about the Qatar Grand Prix, which saw Lewis Hamilton dominate and continue. Don Schumacher Racing, as we've known it for so many years, is basically done. With Ron Capps leaving after winning his second funny car championship. The only car that's left is Tony Schumacher. Next year will be running a top fuel car, but everybody else that was on that team is now either somewhere else doing their own thing. We'll get in all that and a kind of quick review of the NHRA season, because there was plenty of times this year by my own error that I didn't put in NHRA talk. And in regards to World Rally Championship is another one, since we're getting to the end of the year. Sebastian Ogier, who's a legend, one of the greatest of all time, went out and won his 8th World Rally Championship and retired as a full-time driver. What he's going to do after, we can assume sports car racing. As long as he's with Toyota, it'll be sports car racing. He'll do a little rally raid. Maybe he'll come out to the United States. It'd be cool to see him do that. That would be great, because he's one of the greatest ever. We'll talk about football, fantasy football. In the case of fantasy football, it's been working out pretty damn good for Josh. A great trade that I made to him has definitely benefited him. On the other side, his team got demolished by my 49ers. But we'll let that go. Josh will talk about the sim deal with the Freedom 100 and any other racing, because it's a good time. I mean, this week was the first week DWR didn't have their I'm forgetting what they call their series, but DWR has their sim series on iRacing every week. Thursday Night Blunder, there you go. So yeah, because of Thanksgiving, so they'll be back next week. And hopefully we can get in there. I don't know what we have to do to get in there. That'd be cool to get us on there.
Have to figure out how to get in that one.
Yeah. And then I guess you could probably DM Sean or something, or Ryan. Ryan will answer. He's great with his fans. And then we'll close here. So Qatar Grand Prix. Now it's been 5 days. It was a great weekend for Lewis Hamilton in general. Was fast from off the truck, as they would say here, but he was fast in practice. He was fast in qualifying. He led every session, and it basically wasn't much of a discussion behind him. You can make whatever, you can come up with whatever you want to in regards to that, but really he dominated. It was pretty straightforward for him. I mean, I'm just going to go through practice. I mean, in practice one, okay, so I have to correct myself, of course. It wouldn't be a show without me having to correct myself. Lewis was 4th in the first practice. He wasn't, I guess he was running on heavier fuel over Verstappen. In practice 3, so he was close. So he led every session of qualifying. That I'm certain of. He didn't lead in practice, but he led every session of qualifying, and he ended up leading a good amount of the race too. It was, and he needed to, a few weeks ago, it's like the second time I put the dirt on him, and it just as the last time he decided he wasn't gonna listen to that or have that. He led the entire race, won by 25.7 seconds. Max Verstappen was able to get the fastest lap point. In the grand scheme of things, it wasn't really much of a race. Max Verstappen and Valtteri Bottas both ran through double yellows. Karen Horner cried about Max Verstappen's penalty and accused the official of being a rogue official, like he's orangeade. So Karen Horner, as always, can't get out of his own way. But even with that, Max Verstappen was basically second after 4 laps into the race. But he never could catch him, Lewis. Fernando Alonso had an amazing start from third, got into second, passed Pierre Gasly, who ended up moving up. But it was a nightmare scenario for the AlphaTauri team, who were tied with Alpine and coming into this race. And by the end of this race, the Alpine team had scored 25 points with Fernando Alonso's first podium in 7 years, Esteban Ocon getting a top 5 finish, while neither AlphaTauri scored. So they went from being tied in points to 25 points behind in the span of one race. And basically that constructors championship position is now locked in. A lot of stuff went on there behind Lewis Hamilton for sure. A lot of controversy. Valtteri Bottas had a brutal start per usual. I was having that conversation yesterday at Thanksgiving dinner with my fam, with my cousin's husband, who's a fan of Formula One, and my cousin, who's a fan of Valtteri Bottas for whatever reason, trying to justify why he is what he is. And I mean, that start was inexplicably bad. Sure, it was on the dirty side of the track, but you literally watch Max Verstappen drive right by you and through the whole entire field, and you sat there and dropped anchor. And that's why, that is a microcosm of why he's getting replaced for George. At the same token, I think they ran him too long and they didn't think about the strat properly. I mean, Egghead pitted at lap 30, I believe, and he had no problems with his tires. Granted, he's driving about 100 seconds slower than everybody else, but you have to have some semblance of logic with all the technical stuff and all the data you have to not put Valtteri in a position. He's already screwed up. So now it should be about consolidation. They didn't consolidate, and in the process, they let him blow a tire
and took him out of the race. Took their ability to block the fastest lap point away. It's a good thing Lewis Hamilton drives for Mercedes. That's all I'm going to say. Because if it wasn't for Lewis Hamilton driving for Mercedes, people would really have a lot more to analyze about how bad they handle strategy, how bad they handle their drivers, et cetera, et cetera. I'm more outspoken about it, mainly because Lewis has been my driver all this time, but for all these years from the beginning when he came into Formula One. It's something that now you have 2 races to go. You need, if you want to keep this both world championships that you've had for every year since 2014, and Lewis has had 6 of them in drivers and 7 constructors, you need to get your shit right. And, you have 2 races to go. Red Bull aren't going away. They're going to whine and cry and moan their way to whatever. You got to come correct. And, we'll see what happens for sure. We'll preview that next week on the GSP in episode 89. But Josh, what were your takeaways from the race weekend itself and Lewis's performance, Max's recovery? I do in air quotes because it wasn't much of a recovery. It wasn't that hard for him. It was more self-inflicted on his and Red Bull's part. They weren't going to win that race anyway, the way that Mercedes is running. And then anything else that really went on, I think the Alpine piece is something got to get into too later. Yeah, you talk about Lewis's domination of this race. This is exactly what he needed to get back into the championship fight. And now he's only 1 race behind, essentially the first place plus the fastest lap behind Max Verstappen. So if the next race at Saudi Arabia at Jeddah, if he's able to win that one and grab the fastest lap, and Max finishes second, then they'll both be tied going into the final race at Abu Dhabi. So that's going to be an interesting storyline if that happens, because then essentially the championship race is going to be winner take all. And you talked about it last week. This is like Lewis's version of Tony Stewart's comeback in 2011, and it would play out exactly like that and it's, I guess Max is in the Carl Edwards role there, but which should be interesting. But this race, I mean, it was pretty much no question. Lewis has been pretty fast the entire race, and then Max didn't really have much in terms of pace to be able to match Lewis. He got kind of close at the beginning portion of the race within like about 3 seconds or so, but he wasn't able really to gain anything from that, and eventually 25 seconds behind. But basically Lewis is weakened the entire time. And I think you also need to bring up the fact with Red Bull, maybe they could be slipping. I mean, they still have pace, but now that Lewis has won the last 2 races and they haven't been able to match Lewis there. So it's going to be interesting if they can make up for that in the last 2 weekends, if they're able to gain any more pace compared to Mercedes. And you talk about Lewis's dominance compared to Mercedes' mismanagement of strategy. I think they've been able to rest on their laurels of speed that they've had since 2014 when they came to dominance. And I think when you look at their whole period, it's been basically Lewis Hamilton, Nico Rosberg, and Valtteri Bottas whenever he can. And I think for Bottas, it's basically been he has to have a good car, a good piece, like from the get-go to be really competitive. Otherwise, I guess it puts him into position where he could be mistake prone. And we've certainly seen that this year. And even with Lewis, because not really Lewis making mistakes, but now that they're not as fast as what they've been this year, it's kind of shown kind of the imbalances that exist within the team with regards to how they do their strategy, because now they have a legitimate challenge with Max Verstappen and Red Bull. So that's going to be something to look into these last 2 races, if they can minimize their mistakes with strategy, especially with a championship title on the line for Lewis Hamilton. And of course, Valtteri Bottas can't afford to make any more mistakes either, because it's going to help them for the constructors title. But then also in the event where Lewis doesn't have the fastest lap and they need the fastest lap to keep Verstappen from getting it, then Valtteri Bottas needs to be able to be in position to grab that fastest lap point there. So that's what I guess it looks like between the battle with Mercedes and Red Bull. And also bring up Alpine with Alonso. I mean, what a performance by them. I mean, they started up front, up in 3rd place, and then they were able to maintain their position throughout the entire event, and they went on the one-stop strategy. And of course, tire wear was a factor, because I think at the end they had to really manage the pace. They had a pretty worn left front tire by the end of it, and I think Alonso had to really manage his pace there, because otherwise, if he pushed too hard at the end, he would have ended up in a blown left front tire there, just like we saw with Valtteri Bottas, and then also with both the Williams cars, Latifi and George Russell also kind of had the same issue. So it was kind of interesting there with the tire wear, because we saw a lot of other cars kind of had to manage their pace as well, because they would have ran into the same issue. So that was kind of interesting with some of the the field guys, midfield guys having to figure out how to manage their pace to keep the left front tire from blowing out or any other tire. So that's a good result for him, especially coming back from Formula One this year from his exploits in WEC and then in IndyCar. So of course, with Alonso being back here in Formula One, it's kind of I guess at the age of 40, it's basically kind of a little mini renaissance, I guess, with the way he's been able to perform this year. And they're putting Alpine in position where they're going to be able to finish ahead of AlphaTauri, probably, unless AlphaTauri has a good couple of weekends here with Pierre Gasly behind the wheel. And Gasly this weekend wasn't what he needed, finishing or starting second and then finishing in the 11th out of the points, and it hurts them for their title because or their position, because they are now over 25 points behind Alpine, and they're at 112 points in the championship for constructors, and Alpine's at 137. So it's a tough battle there, especially with really only one car in that organization helping them in Pierre Gasly. Yuki Tsunoda hasn't really done all that well this year as a rookie driver, and hasn't been able to put their team in a position to score points for the constructors championship. So I think Gasly's going to have 2 really good weekends here coming up, and then going to have to hope for a little bit of luck in terms of Alpine not having good races with Alonso and Esteban Ocon there. So that's going to be interesting. And then McLaren, they had a chance maybe to make up points, but I think by now it's pretty clear it's probably Ferrari's got third place wrapped up in the bag for them. So McLaren, I mean, they still have 2 races with Ricciardo and with Lando Norris to be able to score points, but it's looking like it's more than likely going to be Ferrari's third place here at the end of the season. So the battle between those 2 teams still things could happen, but I mean, it's looking Ferrari's going to be the team to beat there, and Alpine probably has 5th place wrapped up here. So look for them to try to be able to maximize. I mean, both those teams maximize their results the last 2 weekends. So even though Lewis dominated this race, I mean, it was still compelling, I guess, with the rest of the field having to figure out tighter strategy and maximizing the results.
And I think, I mean, you brought up a lot of great points in regards to especially the Alpine situation, where for a team that this year at times has been probably the 7th best team, for most of the year has been the 7th best team on the grid, to go out there at Qatar, Fernando Alonso was like his old self, went out there and looked like the guy who is widely regarded as one of the best race car drivers of his time. And he was comfortable the whole weekend, loved the track, qualified. He's not the greatest qualifier either. Qualified really well. And even Ocon was good overall during the weekend. Not as good as his teammate, of course, but this is the same. It's similar to Hungary when they maximized their situation when craziness happened. Ocon maximized his situation, was able to win his first Grand Prix. Alonso did his part and blocked Hamilton, and basically that cost Hamilton a chance to win that race. And the same, I mean, it wasn't repaid, even though it was funny. Alonso worked like a bull. I forget what he said, block him like a bull or some crap. And then he literally laid over in like a lap or 2. It didn't matter in the end, even though Sergio Perez, with the weird strategy Red Bull did with him, was catching him at about a second a lap or a few tenths a lap. And the VSC saved him. The Latifi VSC saved his third place. But in the end, it was one of the best drives of the year. He won driver of the day for that one. Big deal. Basically, that money now, 5th in the constructors, huge for Alpine as they look towards next year when, I mean, Fernando Alonso for, I don't know, the last year plus, when he basically said when they announced he was going to be driving for them, said, I'm not really thinking about 2021, I'm thinking about 2022. Well, if that's a sign of what 2022 is going to look like, then we're going to have another guy that's in there along with the Ferraris, along with something, and it could be a very much more competitive situation in regards to the constructors. I mean, it's only 5 points in constructors for Mercedes over Red Bull. The drivers' standings is 8 points between Verstappen and Hamilton. So, I mean, it's still very, very interesting. Bottas is a 13-point lead on Sergio Perez for 3rd. And Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, that's, 7.5 points between the 3 of them. So Lando for a while this year was 3rd in the third driver standings. And then since the summer break, it's been bad for them. And McLaren, for the exception of Ricciardo's, for the 1-2 they had at the Italian Grand Prix, it's been pretty bad for McLaren. And at the same time, Ferrari has been very consistent scoring points, and that has allowed them to make a huge overtake in the constructors standings. Alonso is only 15 points behind Pierre Gasly, but that's not as much of an issue. I mean, right now you could basically say 3rd through 7th, 3rd through 10th is basically determined. I think we already know in regards to constructors. It's going to take almost a miracle scenario for McLaren to get past Ferrari. Same deal for Alpine or AlphaTauri over Alpine. Aston Martin stuck there. Williams, Alfa Romeo, Sauber, and then Haas. So that's really done. It doesn't really matter. It was more intriguing a few races ago in that sense. The drivers' standings you have some battles there for the World Championship. You have a battle for third. You have a battle for fifth. And then from there, it doesn't really matter either. But interesting race going to Jeddah, the Rights Out and Away We Go Grand Prix, part 3, I guess, this year, because they have like 4 of them. What they're saying is going to be the fastest street course ever or something. We'll see how that all works out. We'll preview it on the next episode of the GSP and make our picks. We'll move on to what we're thankful for this year in motorsports and sports. Josh, I don't know if you have anything or what you're thinking of, but I'll let you go first before I close on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thankful. I mean, in sports, thankful for Jaguars getting Trevor Lawrence. I mean, it hasn't worked out as well as what I thought it would, but still, I think he's still the guy. It just doesn't have quite the support that he needs with playmakers and coaching. But I mean, I knew it was going to happen back on December 27 last year, so it's not a thing that it was a surprise and it happened. But December 27 last year, Jaguars lose to the Bears, and the Jets beat the Browns, I think, and then that allows Jaguars to get Trevor Lawrence. So pretty thankful for that we think we have our franchise QB. And then on the motorsports side, thankful that I got to go to the Daytona Road Course race this year for Cup and watch that race. And it was still a pretty good race, being able to be there in person and watch the Cup cars on the road course instead of on the oval. And then saw the IndyCar race at St. Petersburg earlier this year, so thankful for that experience and hanging around that area for that weekend and seeing all my friends over there. Thankful for all the racing that we had this year. I mean, regardless of what happened or how it turned out. I mean, with Cup, I mean, we talked about how bad and some races were good. I mean, it's still glad that we were able to still watch it and that we were able to talk about it this year. And at least, things happened. And even though at times it was not as compelling as what we wanted to, I mean, we still talked about it, and the fact that it's there, we should always be thankful for that. And then, of course, the current race in Formula One, thankful that we're able to actually see a legitimate title battle between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, and it's been a very entertaining season being able to watch these two drivers fight it out in the championship fight. And IndyCar is always thankful that we got to have thankful for the Indy 500 that was really entertaining, being able to see Elio Castro Neves have a really great run at getting his fourth Indy 500 win, making history there. And that whole race was really great that we were able to watch, and thankful that we had a lot of fans there and definitely had a lot of energy there. So, I mean, that's pretty much what I've been thankful for this year in motorsports and sports in general.
Yeah, you were able to go out to some races this year, so that's cool. I mean, going to St. Pete, I think, had to be huge because, I mean, St. Pete's one of the bigger races on the IndyCar calendar these days. It's become a cornerstone event for them. I mean, after, of course, the 500 and the Long Beach Grand Prix, you have to start thinking, okay, what are the biggest races after that? St. Pete is up there. You can look at Barber. People like Barber because of the area and whatever. I'm sure. I mean, there aren't many, standout races. People talk about St. Pete. Everyone talks about it because it's usually the first race of the year. In 2020 was last race of the year, so it's like it always has this positioning. It's been that way basically since 2003 when they returned. And so, I mean, for me, I was going to go like that. I mean, with Formula One having this battle, it's the first time in a long time there's been a compelling Formula One title battle. Even as a Lewis Hamilton fan, I find it intriguing. It's cool to see him. He's always talked about wanting to battle for it, and he's had to. And you can see what he's able to do. He's done this against Massa. He's done this against Nico. He's 1-1 on that. Hopefully he'll be 2-1 in a few weeks. But Max Verstappen now is becoming a guy that is going to be a formidable force, which is good because at the end of the day, no matter how little I like the guy as a person, Formula One needs to have their next generation because Lewis's time is running. We're running to a point now where between Lewis, Sebastian Vettel, and Fernando Alonso, that era is starting to move on. Kimi Räikkönen's going to retire. So they need the next generation. You have Verstappen, you have George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly, Ocon, Lando Norris, all these different young guys that are at different places right now, obviously, in their career. Some have a win, some haven't gotten a win, done different things. And it shows that even though it's very hard to get into Formula One unless your dad's rich, or mom's rich, there is room for some semblance of talent. And so there is a very high level of what Formula One can be post Lewis Hamilton, and it's the same way as they had to go through the ebbs and flows of that goes on in racing, and it's a good thing to see for Formula One as they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. New power units in a few years' time, but new regulations coming in here next year. The IndyCar Championship was great. Alex Palou winning the championship, beating his I'm forgetting how many freaking titles Scott Dixon has. He has a lot. Beating his very highly qualified teammate who's been winning for God knows how long. Beating Pato O'Ward, who's one of the best young talents there is in motorsports. You also look at Colton Herta, who, if Michael Andretti had bought Sauber, he was going to go to Formula One. I mean, the points battle was great, but Alex Palou drove like a veteran and won his first championship, and he's really young and he's got a lot of talent and skill. Just got pipped by Elio at Indy. That was the story of the year, of course. Everyone is going to go to that. One of the best Indy 500s I've ever seen, and I've watched plenty in my lifetime, but it was one of the most intriguing, compelling races. It's the first time with this new chassis and aero combination that we really had a good battle and a good race. It's been a few years since Indy 500 has been kind of that interesting. So that was awesome. The growth of the IndyCar series, the amount of energy there is in the series. You have and it goes, youth and talent is a big thing here too. Palou's a younger guy. Newgarden's a veteran, but he's a younger guy. Pato O'Ward's young. Colton Herta's young. And then now you're going to add Kyle Kirkwood coming into the IndyCar series, albeit driving for AJ Foyt, but he's going to be in the IndyCar series. Rinus VeeKay, Scott McLaughlin. There is so much great young talent and a lot of great energy in the IndyCars. And I think they're just going and they're rising further and further. There'll be more races on NBC now because, of course, there's no NBCSN. There'll be the streaming platform will have all the races and practice and qualifying and all these things. Indy Lights is actually thriving, so that's a positive. So IndyCars is in a great place, and we spend a lot of time Formula One, IndyCar, all kinds of motorsport. So there is that. NASCAR, I think the next gen car has potential to help. I think this past year it was a best of both worlds for Kyle Larson. They wanted Kyle Larson. He went hard R. But they, with their whatever, like the same thing they nailed Mike Harmon and Cesar Baccarella for. I want somebody to tell me how having a kit test car or whatever they call that Hendrick, track day car. I want somebody to go and tell me how that's legal. And when that started relative to when Chase Elliott started going and winning every damn road race. And now Kyle Larson, who couldn't drive on a road course for his life, now can win road races. And the dude's won 10 races. You'll be like, oh, I'm a hater. No, the dude is a great race car driver. There is no doubt his results in the last 2 years are proof positive of that. He could drive a radio flyer and win. I know that, but there's things that you have to question even with him, and maybe we'll see what the next gen car does in regards to Hendrick Motorsports and Gibbs, who are the two dominant factors here this year and really for the last year and a half or two. But I think it's a positive. Brad Keselowski, after all those years at Penske, moving on to become an owner. Interested to see how that'll work out. Only got to win one race there last year at Talladega. But he did a lot for Penske and NASCAR, and it's going to be hard to replace him. But they do have Austin Cindric taking over that car. Joey Logano is now the de facto team leader. Ryan Blaney, who had probably his best year of his career. Let's see what he can do with Jonathan Hassler as his crew chief. With Todd Gordon's retirement, I'm surprised that Brian Wilson isn't moving up with Austin Cindric, but whatever. It's similar to why they didn't move up. I always forget the guy's name. The guy who was a 98 crew chief in the Xfinity series. They should have moved him up with Chase Briscoe, but they should have moved him up, and
Richard Boswell.
Richard Boswell, yeah, thank you. And they moved him up. I think it would have been a much better situation. But hey, Chase Briscoe can say he's been Rookie of the Year in all 3 major NASCAR series, so that's pretty cool. There are a lot of guys, a lot of drivers. They had babies, and so happiness for Chase and his wife Marissa. So they're thankful for that, and I think there is positivity in NASCAR. It's hard to see it a lot with the morons that seem to be fans, the LCD fans, and the bad racing that they put out there, especially in the Cup side. The Xfinity product has been really good. The depth of the field wasn't last year. Next year, it's going to be much better. You're going to have the likes of Sheldon Creed coming up to the Xfinity series. You're going to have Austin Hill with whatever you want to think of him as a driver. He brings money, and he's been a solid driver the last few years for Hattori. They're going to be at RCR, so that's going to immediately, pump up a couple of spots there. It's going to make it much harder to make the playoff this coming year. You're going to have less Fords out there, and you're going to have less Toyotas because there's only going to be 3 full-time cars and really 2 full-time, championship entries. But you're going to have Ty Gibbs, you're going to have Sam Mayer, that whole thing, their little rivalry they got going on. You got some of these other young guns that are coming up. And you have, of course, Josh Berry, who became a fan favorite over this past year with not only his story, but his ability to drive the 8 car and win, and then jump in other people's cars and run really well, and trucks for that matter. And now he's a full-time driver next year and could be a favorite for the Xfinity Championship. Truck Series, Doorsport gets another championship. You wonder about the health of that series, also ARCA over time, but we're thankful they're there. Racing, it's great. We have it world. I think one thing we can be thankful for before we move on to the next segment is the fact that sports car convergence has taken place with prototypes. So now, for the first time, I think since 1996 or 7 or something somewhere around there, the mid to late 90s, teams and cars that compete at the Rolex 24 can compete at Le Mans, vice versa. There's going to be the best cars, best teams, best drivers are going to be at Daytona, at Sebring, at Le Mans, Petit Le Mans, all these other, Silverstone 6 hours, whatever, all the great races, the Spa 1,000 kilometer, whatever, it'll be back to what it used to be, at least for a while. We'll see how long the money lasts. So there's a lot to be thankful for. In sports, Niners getting Trey Lance, even though they don't use him, made me very happy. I feel like the future is bright there. Niners have some semblance of hope. The Knicks actually being good for the first time in 2 decades was nice. The Colorado Avalanche being good, even though they can't get through the second round, or the Vegas Golden Knights. But they have such a great young nucleus, Yankees or whatever. It's Cashman and Aaron Boone suck. They both are garbage, but especially Brian Cashman. But I'll always be an Aaron Judge guy. I don't care. I'm not here for Aaron Judge hate. The guy can play, and he's got heart. He's going to be the captain. Now, who they're going to put around him to make a baseball team is to be determined, and how they're going to manage that baseball team to be determined. But a lot to be thankful for. We're here. We're healthy, or relatively healthy. We got this show. Thankful that we were able to do basically another year. We started this in March of 2020 during pandemic. We got through that. We've had a full year of racing. We're still going with this season. We got some football and other sports to talk about. We'll run this out till Christmas and take some time off, but really it's a great thing that we have this platform, and people do listen. I get comments here and there. and positive reinforcements. So we're making our name slowly but surely, and might have some interesting people come on here over time here in the next few months that might raise our profile just a little bit. Let's see. GSP Roundup. We're gonna go to the World Superbikes. World Superbike title. Raskat Degulu wins, beats Johnny Ray, which is pretty crazy. He beats him by 13 points. That is unbelievable. It's nice to finally see Johnny Ray lose. It sounds horrible, but it's like the guy's they had to rain out one of the races too, but it didn't matter because Raskat Degulu had the points gap. Ray won race one over Toprak and Redding third. Let's see, Gerloff was 11th. And then in race 2, you have Ray winning over Redding and Michael Vandermark. Toprak was 4th. And Garrett Gerloff was 6th in the final race of the season. The standings saw, as I said, with the championship was 13 points. Gerloff finished 7th in points. So that hopefully he'll be able to get another year and possibly go and move further up the grid here. That would be good for him and for his progress in regards to possibly moving up to MotoGP, if that is a thing. Maybe if Yamaha actually is committed to their World Superbike people. Shane Van Gisbergen won his second world V8 Supercars championship, and I mean it really wasn't much of a battle to go and win that. To be fair, he really only his main challenger this year was his teammate. He won the race 1 over Jamie Whincup, then Cam Waters, Anton De Pasquale, Chaz Mostert, and it says grid 2. What is it? Oh, yeah. So that was the race there at Sydney 4. The last race of the year will be the Bathurst 1000. We will talk about that on the next, or not next week, or is it? Yeah, it is. Yeah. So we'll preview the Bathurst 1000 next week. Van Gisbergen has won the championship again, of course. Whincup will more than likely finish second in his last year as a full-time driver. He's, in a lot of ways, he's the Jimmy Johnson to Craig Lowndes, Jeff Gordon to, Peter Brock's Dale Earnhardt. That's kind of the comparison. If you kind of go and compare it to NASCAR, or you could call him like Peter Brock. I think he's more like Dale Earnhardt. Dick Johnson was the Bobby Allison. Dick Johnson really has like Bobby Allison kind of characteristics. It makes a lot of sense. Or Cale, but more like Bobby Allison. Will Davison third, Chaz Mostert 4th, Cam Waters 5th, Anton De Pasquale 6th. So Will Davison driving for the DJR team, and De Pasquale also. So they're 3rd and 6th. Mostert driving for Andretti United, Waukesha Andretti United Autosport or whatever. Cam Waters driving for the Tickford Ford team. So we will see what happens at Bathurst in regards to that. In NHRA, it was a interesting year, but a lot the same. Steve Torrens won yet another Top Fuel title. He's been dominant here over the last few years in the points, even with points and a half was really the only reason why it was somewhat competitive, but it really wasn't. Brittany Force would qualify well, but not do much on race day. Finished 2nd in points. Salinas finished 3rd. Justin Ashley 4th. Billy Torrens. So Pops finished 5th. Antron Brown in his last race for DSR before he goes out on his own finished 6th in points. He lost to his buddy Torrance at Pomona in the finals. Leah Pruitt Stewart, or is she going to be Leah Stewart or whatever? Congrats to Leah and
congrats
Tony.
to her and Tony.
Yeah, for their epic wedding. Her last race for DSR before she becomes part of Tony Stewart Racing's NHRA program. Milliken, Langdon, Coletta were your top 10 in points. Josh Hart, who's going to probably run, if he runs full time next year, is going to be tough because he's a really good driver when he does show up. In regards to the funny car standings, as I mentioned, Ron Capps beats his teammate Matt Hagan for the championship by 37 points. And Capps does not have a ride. We don't know what he's going to do, but two-time funny car champion. After many years, he never won a championship. Now he's got two. Still hasn't won Indy. I figure that's going to want to make him want to continue to try to win that race. Hagan will be part of the Tony Stewart Racing outfit. We don't know what manufacturer connection there will be or any of that, but they have good people there. Tasca finished third. Pendragon fourth. John Force fifth. DeJoria and J.R. Todd, the Toyotas, they're going to have a new body style next year. They finished 6th and 7th. Robert Height, 8th. Tim Wilkerson, 9th. And Jim Campbell and Blake Alexander, 10th and 11th. They ran all the races, so they were in the countdown. I'm trying to look at who else is up there. Anybody that kind of stands out? Not really. In the pro stock category, Greg Anderson won his 7th championship, I believe, by 107 points over Erica Enders, who was trying to go for another championship on her end. So that battle between KB and Elite will continue. The KB cars finished first, third, and fourth. So in the first year without Chase and Line, they were able to run through pretty well with Dallas Glenn. Kyle Koretsky did their part, and then you have Aaron Stanfield, Troy Coughlin Jr., who are part of the elite performance side, finished 5th and 6th. So the youth movement is there. The future of the pro stock category is there. Mason McGahey beat his dad by, 17 points in the championship standings. You had Matt Hartford, Derek Kramer, and Kenny Delco, who ran all the races. You have some of these. Brogdon's coming back next year full time. And then Bo Butner's going to come back next year full time. So that'll be interesting. That'll add a little bit more depth to the field in pro stock. The pro stock motorcycle category could change a lot between now and next March when they come back at Gainesville. Matt Smith has been running his Buell for many years and running 200-mile-an-hour laps on that bike. But the way the rules are, he might end up on a Suzuki again. He ends up getting yet another championship over Angel Sampey. Steve Johnson finished third. Craywick fourth, who was on a Buell this year. Sampey and Johnson on Suzukis. Karen Stouffer finished fifth on a Suzuki. And then the Matt Smith Racing teammates, Scotty Polachek and Angie Smith. Joey Gladstone on a Suzuki, Andrew Hines on a Buell, and Ryan Ayler, I think, was on a Buell, but I don't remember off the top. Corey Reed finished 11th. He made every start. He's on a Suzuki. So there could be a lot of changes in regards to that. NHRA, we'll see how it goes with all the categories, with some of the news. There's still stuff we have to find out in regards to what Tony's team's going to do and what some of these other outfits are going to do in regards to their people and how they're going to manage everything there. What is it? The last part? Yeah. Ogier, when you're talking about World Rally, you think about, how the likes of Sebastian Loeb and all the world championships he won. You think about, Carlos Sainz, or you think about, Colin McRae. You think about the legends of the sport, but in the Ogier having to go and basically live like it's where they said it on motorsport.com, like you're basically following a legend. And he was able to win championships for 3 different manufacturers. He won for Citroen, he won for Ford, and he won for Toyota. So it tells you how good he is. And it'll be interesting to see what the next stage in Sebastian Ogier's career will be. His co-driver Julian Ingrassia is actually retiring after this year. So that'll be something. So he'll need a new new co-driver when he does his limited rallies along with whatever else he's going to be doing. So it'll be curious to see how things move on and what some of these teams, because it's become basically Toyota and Hyundai. There's new regulations with the Rally One concept, with electrification, and so that's going to change things up a bit. Now that Ogier is gone, we'll see who can step up and become that world champion, and take that mantle from one of the greatest ever. I know we mentioned something about NASCAR and IndyCar. I'm just going to go into, I'm going to go to Racer and see in regards to IndyCar. I mean, Pruitt's been posting stuff, in regards to Ed Carpenter Racing. You got Brian Hurd of Autosport talking about trying to go and get back into IndyCars again. We got Chase Elliott running Nitro Rallycross.
Yep, over here in Florida and Stark, which is kind of near where I'm at. So I don't know.
That's cool.
I might see if I can go to that. I don't know. I'm not sure what my weekend plans next weekend are, but might be able to go to that if I'm available to.
Yeah, and then I know Kyle went and stayed out in Arizona to run a couple of them races, but you have Oliver Askew who's going to move to Formula E, driving for Andretti Autosports team. Their IndyCar series is going to have, now that they're going to have bigger grids, instead of having 2 groups in the first round of qualifying, they're going to have 3 groups in the first round of qualifying. It looks like, based on what Marshall Pruitt's saying, they have, Eric Jones's 43 team is
they got a new sponsor.
Focus Factor as their sponsor, which is interesting. The paint,
it's going to be like DC Solar.
Yeah, it's an ugly paint scheme, and it's probably going to work out like most of the sponsors that RPM seems to get. So I mean, So I think that's, I mean, I don't know. Is there anything you saw or have seen in recent days that stood out to you in regards to news or?
Well, I mean, I saw the article or whatever that NASCAR is trying to reschedule or amend the schedule for next gen testing. Not really sure what's up with that or why they're doing that. But I mean, I know there's been some talk about the testing at Charlotte, and Denny Hamlin, I guess he was on Racing Spaces, the Twitter space for motorsports discussion that goes on weekly on Tuesday nights. He was on there and they were talking about the test, and he was talking about if NASCAR wants pack racing, they'd be 100% behind it. But then also, if they don't want that, then they'd also be 100% behind that. And they want more clear direction from the series on why, or what they're going to be doing as regards to the rules package. So that was really the only takeaway from that. But, I mean, we all know how it's going to go with this next gen car. They're going to be flat out in the corners and everything. It's going to be more like pack racing and stuff like that. I mean, I don't really want pack racing because you can't really make any moves. You're all just close together, and only like the leaders really change positions and all that stuff. I think you kind of want something where at least you're able to pull up behind the car and make a pass going into the corners and still stay behind the car, following through the corner. I mean, I think the draft should be relevant, but it shouldn't be like where they have, the entire pack being able to race together. I mean, there should be some degree of separation, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I guess we talked about what we're thankful for, and we have motorsports and NASCAR more or less is going to go back to a regular format. It's not this regular format they had for many years, but they're literally the last ones on deck with having practice and qualifying. But basically trying to force the action and make it like what IROC used to be or whatever the hell they're trying to make Daytona and Talladega. Yeah, or IRL, yeah, more like that with Daytona and Talladega crap every race, especially at cookie cutters, is not good racing. I don't care. Most people that have any common sense know it isn't good racing, but they do it for the LCD, I guess.
I mean, it should be like trucks at Michigan. I saw somebody on Reddit talk about or was commenting on the same story, and they said it should look like what the truck races at Michigan look like, and they've been able to stay together for the most part. But then on the on the straights, if you can get a good enough run, you can pass through the corners, and then the guy that you pass can still pass back on the next straight. So I mean, that's what I think maybe the idea should look like. But I mean, it's probably gonna the way they're talking about it, the way we've seen on the iRacing simulations that they've run, looks like it might end up being like more of a on the cookie cutters, more of like what the IndyCars looked like in the mid 2000s when it was the IRL.
Yeah, which is dangerous. I mean, to be fair, it's not open wheel, it's covered and all, but there's a lot more. I think you have the aluminum wheels or bigger wheels. You got other components. You have independent suspension now. It's not a big 9-inch rear. There's a lot of things, and maybe they've made more safety enhancements with this Gen 7 where it'll not be as big of a deal. But I don't understand what the grand what they expect from that. I don't know what your return is other than you're just going to have, because we've already seen what the Gen 6, they were doing all kinds of things with the Gen 6. They couldn't come up with a package that worked. And going and doing this with this car, if the cars are closer and are able to stay closer, it's one thing. But the fundamental fact is you need to be faster to be able to pass. And if you're going to make them all the same speed, they're all just going to be stuck there. Then it's going to become it's going to be a pitch strategy contest, or it's going to be a qualifying contest or something like that. It'll be similar to Formula One in a lot of ways, where races could be decided on Saturday. For many years, that's what people would say. It's like, okay, the race is over on Saturday because so-and-so qualified on pole. Well, I think that's where they're going, especially at certain tracks. On road courses, you're going to see more driving talent come to the fore. Short tracks, you have to be able to drive. And so I guess that's what you hope for. And you don't really watch the cookie cutters. But I don't know. I mean, Hamlin trying to get out there, he's the most outspoken right now. I mean, I think now that he's an owner and Keselowski's an owner, we're going to hear a lot more about all these rules changes and all these things and how they affect the driver, because they're both driving. I mean, Brad's directly driving for his team and Denny's indirectly. So, I mean, you're going to have more coming out of those. I think people are going to be going to those two guys a lot now. And to see where everything goes in regards to this rules package and how racing is. I mean, I think they need to, I don't know how many times we talked about it here, but I'm like, you don't need to have a 7-inch blade on the back. You just need like maybe a 4-inch blade at most. Put a wicker on the spoiler if you want, or put a wicker on the roof, and just put like a standard wicker on the roof and put like a gurney flap on the spoiler, whatever. Like, there's minimal adjustments you need to make. You don't need to have a big ass spoiler on the back that looks ridiculous. You can't see out the back of the car. I mean, they can't see out the back of the car anyway, but I mean, they have to get to digital like mirrors or something, like if all these expensive cars can have them, then a NASCAR Cup car could have a
like
digital
in sports
rear
cars.
mirror. Yeah. Sports cars have them, and they have all kinds of other gimmicks and gizmos in there that that's what they have to do so that you can actually see out the back. You should be able to have like the whole like rear, like if you can have rear view facing, backup cameras and rear view facing camera and the whole bit, you could do that for NASCAR. And I think that would also help. You're not going to get rid of spotters, but I think for the safety aspect and the ability to kind of race, it might improve that. Because of the field of view is not very, very wide. Even in IndyCar with the halo and the aero screen, I think they have a way better field of view than, and even in Formula One. So, but then you're saying, you're comparing it to open wheel racing. Okay, we'll go to sports car racing, but then they have the digital mirrors. So, we'll see, I guess. Don't know. they're keep on promoting the race at the Coliseum where they're going to destroy a bunch of race cars. So we'll see how that all works out for all them owners when they're destroying a bunch of cars at the LA Coliseum like a week before they have to go to the Daytona 500 or whatever the hell it is. But I guess that's NASCAR for you. Let's see. Yeah. The next part, football. So yeah, I mean, the way that Josh went and did me dirty a few weeks ago in fantasy, the San Francisco 49ers definitely did that to Josh's Jacksonville Jaguars. It was nice to see Deebo Samuel become a running back because Kyle Shanahan is against running Trey Sermon for whatever reason. But Jimmy G was pretty efficient. Offense was running on all cylinders, but defense was able to make great plays. I mean, Josh Allen didn't have a bad day for your boys, Josh. One of the same performances he had against Buffalo, against Josh Allen, who went off last night. But, I mean, you have guys. That's the thing. It's like you have Trevor Lawrence, you have Josh Allen, you have building blocks for a future. It's whether you have the leadership in place at the head coach and GM position that will continue to build this roster, and will you be able to maintain and keep the likes of Trevor Lawrence and Josh Allen in due time? When you consider how crazy the NFL has become now, like how wide open both conferences seem to be. I mean, it's more straightforward, I think, in the NFC. There's way better teams, but in the AFC, it's really wide open right now.
I mean, the AFC is really wide open. There's a bunch of teams that are kind of the middle that have about 4 or 5 losses, but they're still in contention for at least one of the wild card spots, and there's at least one division spot. The AFC West is up for grabs. The Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Raiders, and even the Broncos all could win it, depending on how the season goes. I mean, I think the way the Chargers are playing right now, I think they probably end up getting it. But the Chiefs are starting to turn around after what they were in the middle of October, compared to what they've been the last 3 or 4 years, and it seems like they're becoming more like that. But the NFC is definitely top heavy right now. All 4 teams look pretty dominant as far as the teams leading the divisions. I mean, you have the Rams, the Bucks, the Cardinals, the Cowboys. Even though they lost, they were on Thanksgiving. I mean, they've still been pretty good. But I mean, as far as the Jaguars go, I mean, Trevor Lawrence, but the receivers not getting enough separation. It goes all the way back to training camp. They weren't really getting separation against their own defense, and they're not been able to get much production there. So they got to invest in wide receivers. We'll see what happens. The offense hasn't been as good since James Robinson got hurt in Seattle back on Halloween. So that's going to be a focus. If they can get James Robinson going again, can get healed up, and he's 100%. We'll see what happens there. But biggest thing for me on Jaguars 49ers was lack of people showing up to the games. I mean, can't really blame them. Team sucks. Even they had a big win against Buffalo, but overall still teams not really inspiring much confidence. So I get that part, but then at the same time, like a bunch of 49ers fans showed up in the north end zone, where it used to be known as the Cage of Rage for Jaguars fans that had been there, but now is filled up by a bunch of 49ers fans. So it's got to be some way to get people to show up for the games. And the Jaguars, they got to want to be, or the fan base, they got to want to be a NFL fan base, NFL city. So there's the balance there, I guess. The team has to be able to provide a product, be confident in, but at the same time, fans got to be able to show up to the games. So it doesn't look like it's just a home game for away fans. The 49ers fans showed up there. That was kind of what made me really concerned. But the gameplay itself, we lost Jamal Agnew. So probably been the electric return guy this whole year. And now out of the season because of hip injury that he suffered when he was getting tackled on it was like a 3rd and 2 or whatever. He caught the ball, got the first down, but as he's going down, got his hip dislocated or whatever. So now he's out for the year. Now we've got, I think, Tavon Austin, and they re-signed Jadon Mickens, who'd been on the team before back in the AFC Championship run a few years ago. So we'll see how that goes. But I mean, as far as the rest of the year, I mean, Trevor's got to just throw it deep like he was at the beginning of the year, but maybe he'll be better. I think he's minimized mistakes, but they gotta open it up for him and take off the training wheels completely and just let him throw. So because that's what he is. He's not a short downfield or short completions guy. He likes to throw the ball down the field, and kind of neutered him. And you gotta let him take over the game and just let him do his thing. So we'll see how it goes for Jaguars.
Yeah, I mean the guy was drafted number 1 overall. This dink and dunk crap. I mean, I know that the weapons at times this year, injuries have definitely decimated you guys. The James Robinson injury is huge. He's the best player on your offense right now. To not have him is a big problem because he sets a table. But Trevor Lawrence, you'd rather him throw 28 picks and learn, being a gunslinger or doing whatever he wants to do, be more like what Peyton did in his rookie year, and then come back next year and be, motivated, rejuvenated, learning from your mistakes, than this crap, this mediocre kind of very, very blah offense that they're running. I mean, it's like what New Orleans is running with Trevor Siemian, or it's like what a lot of these backups do when they're in the game. He's the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. Guy could have won a Heisman Trophy at least twice. He led national championship winning teams. The guy can play football really, really well. Let the guy play football. You're 2 and whatever. You got your signature win against a team that's more than likely going to make the playoffs and has a chance to make a run. Niners giving you run isn't that big of a deal when you consider that the Niners like 2 weeks ago were dead in the water, and now all of a sudden literally beat 2 teams in 11 days, and now everything is back again. Now they're in the back end of the playoffs. Well, let's see how they respond. They need to win this game against Minnesota this weekend. Last time they played Minnesota was the divisional round in January of 2020. I think Jimmy threw 8 times that game, and they ran with Raheem Mostert and whoever else they had at that point, probably Jeff Wilson and somebody else, and they ran the ball for like hundreds of yards. They were able to stop Dalvin Cook. They limited Kirk Cousins, but the secondary of the Niners is a question mark, and you have Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, which is one of the best combinations in the NFL. Conklin has been playing better, playing well enough for them to where the tight end could be in play. So the offense isn't the same kind of offense they've had for all these years in Minnesota. Jimmy G is playing about as well as he's played in a while. They're not playing Trey Lance, and they're just more about efficiency. Eli Mitchell is one of the best rookies in the league this year. He's been a revelation. As long as he's out there, they have a much better chance on the running game than what they had last week. Jeff Wilson struggled. The interior is good for Jacksonville. So, I mean, that's the thing. It's the same thing for Minnesota. They're always known about their interior line. Eric Kendrick's one of the best linebackers in the league, too. So it's going to be a tough game. They're both in the wild card race and need to win that game. Niners have won 1 game at home in over a year or whatever, and that was 2 against the Rams. They need to win this game to keep going, move up. They'd basically swap spots with Minnesota, I think. But then they have to beat, they have games against LA again. You have Seattle again. You need to go and keep winning. That's the only way you can guarantee a spot. You don't really know what's going to happen. Arizona's basically a juggernaut. They don't even have their starting quarterback and their number 1 wide receiver. They're still winning games. They're probably going to get home field advantage at this rate. Aaron Covidiot, as long as, they lost to Minnesota last week, so they have to recover. You have the Rams, who've been scuffling recently. Cowgirls lost yesterday to the Raiders. They've lost 2 in a row against AFC West opponents. Philly is actually on the upswing with their basically triple option offense that they're running now. So, there's a lot of moving parts there. The South division, I'm trying to think, is Tampa, but they're struggling. Carolina's in there in the mix, but not, they have their good weeks and bad weeks. And I'm trying to think who's the other. New Orleans just got blown out at home. So the Tampa's probably still going to make it through, no problem. But it's looking like things are getting a little more wide open than they were a few weeks ago. And it's nice. There's still another, 6 weeks of football to go in the regular season. In regards to the fantasy, you're third and likely going to you're going to continue there, no problem. You have a good chance of moving up depending, or having a opportunity to move up depending on what happens in this game between Vic and
Wilson and
Wilson.
Vic, that's the matchup to watch this weekend.
Yeah, and I'm going to be hanging out with them tomorrow, so it'll be cool to see them. Vic is second right now. Wilson took his first L of the year a couple of weeks ago, and Vic has won 7 straight games to get to within a game of Wilson. And now if he can win this week, he will be tied or he'll be in the lead based on points for. If he takes an L and Josh wins, he'll still be second by points. But I'm in fourth, basically in no man's land right now. I'm a game behind Josh, 2 behind Vic, but there's only 3 weeks to go in the regular season, so it's gonna be hard to make any real progress there. But high points is still a possibility for me there. I'm second in that race, so we're trying to go and make sure we make the playoff, no problem. Got a 2-game lead on a 3-way battle between Joe, Manny, and Nick for 5th. So 2 of those 3 will make the playoffs. Demi has tapped out, and Luke is trying to make a sneak run, but he'd have to win out basically, which I don't think is going to happen because he's playing Josh this week. So the other matchup to watch is Joe and I guess Demi, because that could flip things, and also Manny and Nick, which is a swing game as well. For Professor J, his Buffalo Bills won. For Demi, we got to go and see Dave Chappelle earlier this week, so his week was made and all that. So I don't think he really cares about fantasy football. I mean, he got to go to Survivor Series the day before, and I had a ticket. My friend Jasmine was hanging out with while we didn't do the show on Wednesday. We're bowling, but she had an extra ticket because one of her friends had a bail, and I got Demi, and we went to go and see Chappelle. I think I was high for at least 24 to 36 hours after that on the contact high. I didn't wake up. I got home at 2:30 or 2:15 in the morning after trying to find food because nothing was open. Then I fell asleep at 3:30, woke up at 7, watched Good Morning Football for 5 minutes and on the fly because they have hot chicks. And then I went back to sleep and woke up at 3. It was nice I took that day off because then I went back to work the next day and got bad news. So it was nice I went and had that day off, and I got to watch Dave Chappelle, and so did Demi. He was freaking out. All these people. It was you had Jon Stewart, you had Jeff Ross was the host, you had Fat Joe, Buster Rhymes, Rakim, all these people. It was insane, a who's who. Her, if you're into her, I don't think people who listen to GSP really listen to her, but maybe if you do, God bless you. I had no idea who the hell she was. And Dave Chappelle made a reference to pronouns, of course, since he's in the news because he's with the whole alphabet. He said that too. You made that joke too. It's y'all took half the alphabet. How the hell a third of an alphabet? That's some fucked up shit. Yeah. So we'll see what happens with football. I mean, I lost to the worst team in the league I won last year. The guy didn't even have a full lineup, so it tells you how bad my team played. Dropped to 7th, but I'm still in a position to make the playoffs there. Took a rough loss in the sleeper league. Vic and we have that team, and now we're back to basically the bottom, but we could try to win out and maybe sneak in the playoffs, but I have a hard time believing that's going to happen either. But we will see what happens in regards to that. Josh, you have trying to find all these tabs. Made your
Freedom
run
100.
Freedom 100. How did that go, and what else is going on in regards to the sim side?
I mean, the Freedom 100 was last Sunday, and attempted that one. I thought qualifying ended up being a little bit off from what I wanted to, so had to go into the LCQ race to try to make it in, but I ended up using 2 of my so they gave you 2 fast repairs in the pits, and ended up using those pretty quickly. And then I made a mistake, I guess, because I was trying to use the outside line the high side, because as I guess there was still room and you didn't have to lift for traffic in the corners. So just trying to use the high side, and then I kind of made contact with somebody else, and our wheels touched, and then I went and hit the wall, and then that was pretty much the end of my race there. So I didn't even make it in, but it was still a pretty good race to be in. I mean, Ryan Vargas was in that race. Devlin DeFrancesco was in that race. I think his brother was also in that race. So there were some pretty big people that were trying to qualify into the race. And Ryan Vargas, I think he ended up getting crashed out on the last lap of the race. They crashed coming to the finish line for like 5th place, and top 8 had to make it in. And I think he finished like in 13th place. DeFrancesco, both of them made it in to the main race, but then I think it was almost better to not qualify for the race because the race itself was scheduled to be 40 laps, and then they ended up running 60 because of green white checkers and stuff, and they ran 40 laps of caution. So the actual scheduled distance ended up being like 40 laps of caution, and then I guess they only had like 20 laps of green in that one. And I think it was, I mean, because of a lot of crashing, but then also because I guess iRacing, there has to be at least 2 laps of yellow, and sometimes there's 3 laps of yellow because depending on when you catch the pace car, if you catch the pace car like on coming to the caution comes out and then you cross the finish line and then the pace car comes out, then immediately the pits open and then everybody can start pitting and then they go back to green within 2 laps. But then sometimes if you catch it after you've crossed the finish line, then you got to pick up the pace car in the next lap. So essentially there's like 3 laps of caution total. So there's some issues there with that because I think they were trying to figure out a way how to quicken up the yellows so they only have like 1 lap of caution or so. So there's issues with that. But I mean, even with that, I mean, there's still a bunch of wrecking and stuff because it's the Indy Lights. Well, it's not the Indy Lights car. It's like the Indy PM 18 or something like that. It's one of the newer cars that they run in those divisions, but it's basically, pack racing. You're driving over the top of each other. I mean, in the qualifying race that I was in, I mean, I had a huge run on the back stretch, but then by the time we get to turn 4, there's like everybody's blowing by me because they've got a bigger run than what I've got. So it's it's just a lot of drafting and stuff, and really it's like how a Talladega race plays out. You want to be up front in front of all the mess, and so I was trying to do trying to get up to the front as much as possible, but then it was an issue of just trying to keep out of the mess. And I made contact with Christopher DeHardy, and I think you know who he is, and he made contact with me and trying to avoid one of the wreck. And then I took damage on that, and then he DM'd me during the race and was like, "Oh, sorry about that. I didn't mean to get into you." And he was like, "Yeah, it's all good. We're all trying to race really hard here." And everything. And he's said, "Yeah, just want to make sure that he let me know that," and said that he owns up to all those kind of moves, which is good. And I think he had that approach of just staying behind the field until they got to the last couple of laps, which probably would have been the strategy to have, and just wait for people to take people out and all that stuff. And I mean, they still ended up wrecking like coming to the line, and I think one guy like basically made it in by crashing and then driving over the top of somebody literally to get into the show. So it was just a lot of crashing and stuff, and wonder if they can figure out a way to, I guess, get some kind of separation so it isn't quite like that. But I don't know, it might just be the car. Even if the car is able to max out, I guess, the drag to downforce ratio, like where you don't have a ton of downforce and you can actually separate it. I think it's just slow enough on top end speed that they end up bunched up together anyways. So I guess that's just how it is. But I don't know, try again some other races, I guess. I mean, try to figure out how to get in dinner with racers, I guess, or something like that. I'm still trying to get into some, I guess there is another event that was supposed to be today that I didn't know about. All right, well, I knew about, but I knew I wasn't gonna be able to participate in. But it was like, I guess, like some invite only for like the top 500 iRacers that race in the iRacing IndyCar series. That it's based on like incident per lap, and I guess they had an invite to like a, I guess like a mini championship series or something where they would all in, the top 500 cleanest racers on iRacing in the IndyCars would race like a 5 or 10 race series in one day or something like that. So I mean, if I were in front of my sim computer, which I'm not, then would be in that. But since I'm visiting family and stuff, I don't have all that. But that's fine and everything. So we'll just continue to do the sim racing stuff, elsewhere. And next week we'll get back into it and race the Indy cars, race the '87 car, all that stuff, and try to get in as much opportunity to race in events as I can.
And that's, we'll, as the off season goes on, we'll see what else is going on in regards to Sims, any big updates, and we'll go to you in regards to all of that, because obviously I can't afford one of these yet. One day I will. I keep on saying it. I'm going to manifest that the same way as I'm going to manifest hitting the lottery. You can find, before we go, Josh, where can we follow you in regards to your Twitch streams and on the socials and see what all your exploits?
Yeah, as always, follow the Twitch stuff, Twitch TV/UCLR2 to watch sim streams, let you know when we stream, let you know when all that happens. And of course, follow on Twitter, which I'll tweet out the stream link when I do. Follow that at twitter.com/JPHuffline. You can see all the stuff that I post and everything I talk about on there.
Follow me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. You can follow the Grip Strip Podcast at Grip Strip Pod on Twitter. That's capital G, capital S, capital P. We're on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, Pandora. Basically, anywhere you can listen to podcasts, you can listen to Grip Strip Podcast. You can follow me at PhilipGMatthew28 on Instagram. There's, what's it called? What am I trying to think? PhilipGMatthew.com, which is the WordPress site I have, where this show gets posted there as well. Trying to get back into writing. Hopefully during this off season, I'll be able to, so then I can start posting some stuff in regards to that. But yeah, we'll be back next week, episode 89. We'll discuss Formula One, Jeddah, the Saudi Grand Prix, any news and notes that come from the world of motorsports. We'll get into that. We'll also discuss football, both regular and fantasy, and whatever else comes to mind here on the GSP. So depending on when you're listening, whatever, happy Thanksgiving to you and yours, and hope you have a good long weekend, as long as you're able to, or even if you have to work one day or whatever, be able to enjoy it, have some good food, time with family, as we both have been able to do. And we will see you next week on the GSP. Continue this Formula One World Championship. Hopefully we'll have an interesting battle as we finish out the Formula One season and the major motorsport season in general. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Take care. God bless.